What's going on, guys? Quinn69 here. How are you guys doing today? As you can see, I'm logged onto my wizard, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a guide on the Archon wizard, aka the Veers set. In 2.3, they did a rework on the set, and they basically took it from garbage to one of the most competitive sets that wizards have. It's like an extremely melee-oriented build, so if you like barbs and monks, like I do, then you'll actually be able to enjoy this build. The actual playstyle, like, is very quite unique. I've never actually played a build that has this kind of momentum built into it, and this kind of rotation where you go from in between like this ultimate god to like a little peasant, back and forth. It's pretty cool. And I'm going to show you guys kind of like how I play it and how I think, you know, how you can basically abuse this set and get, you know, really quite high in the Greaterus by playing it correctly. So the first thing you'll need to take note of is the Archon stacks. So you see where it says like Archon, it's got like a little Archon picture and it's got 90 there. Basically every stack you get gives you 1% attack speed, and it gives you more all resist and survivability. So basically the more Archon stacks you have, the better. And now you're wondering, how do I get Archon stacks? You get one Archon stack per enemy you hit with each spell you cast. So your little explosive blast is giving you one Archon stack per enemy hit. That's the number one key. And with every one of your other abilities, either your left click or your right click, that'll also give you Archon stacks. Your left click does slightly more DPS than your right click. Obviously the trade-off is it's melee. But with this build, you have to be in melee range anyway, so you're going to generally go ahead and spam the left click to do damage. You can use right click, that's disintegrate, if there's some really dangerous stuff going on. I think I used it a few times during this rift, you'll see. That's basically just to avoid molten, to avoid like grotesque explosions or anything that's going to kill you, or to actually pull monsters from afar while you're doing melee damage. And you'll notice I've actually got Archon stacks outside of Archon. That's due to the helmet. It's called the Swammy, and it makes your Archon stacks last 20 seconds after you get out of Archon form. And obviously, because you get defense and attack speed, this is really quite overpowered, because what it means is when your Archon drops, you then have the attack speed and the survivability to keep fighting in order to get your Archon form back faster. Because we're using the ring, the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, that reduces your cooldowns of one of your spells by 1 second for each arcane spender you use. And because you have so much attack speed, when you use Arcane Barrage, you actually you can reduce your Archon cooldown drastically. You can make your Archon come back up like almost in 5 seconds if you have enough Archon stacks. It's insanely fast. The other thing you'll need to note is Chantodo's Wills. That's an item I'm using. See that little yellow orb there? When I'm outside of Archon form, basically every attack that I deal gives me one Chantodo stack. And it stacks up to 20 times, and basically the more stacks you have, the more damage you deal with the big AoE pulse. You'll notice there's 2 pulses coming out when I'm in Archon form. One is my Chantodos, and the other pulse is my Explosive Blast. Chantodos is the one doing the most damage, so it's really important that you always get your Chantodo stacks to up to 20 before you go into Archon form. So you'll see here, I'm going to drop out of Archon form, boom, and then I'm going to basically try staying safe. See my Chantodo stacks 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We keep fighting, 18, 19, 20. Now my Chantodo stacks are up. Now I'm good to go, Archon form, and now I keep attacking. And now we've got double overlap of the Archon. And during this time, we have the crazy fast attack speed to actually get my Archon form up to a higher amount. And the more you overlap every time, the higher and higher your Archon form can go. And obviously this scales a lot better with good density, so you'll notice when I have good density, my Archon stacks are getting really high. And then I can kind of overlap them and use that overlap to then, next time I go into Archon, get even more stacks because I have more attack speed. And basically in absolute GG rifts, like Silver Spire rifts and stuff, you know, your Archon stacks can get over 200 quite easily. And when your Archon stacks are over 200, that means you got 200% attack speed, 200% damage, 200% like all resist, you know, you just become like a completely unkillable just death machine. This rift that I'm doing right now is extremely average, is very mediocre. So like don't like this. I'm doing a GR60 right now. This with my current gear, I can eat. Like, my gear is not perfect or anything. I could probably do a 67 and like a really good rift. I see wizards getting into 70s next season with Veers. So yeah, it's a really powerful build. It just requires a really good rift. Obviously, that scales in the opposite direction. If you get a bad density map with you know, bad mob types, then it's the complete opposite. You get hardly any stacks, and you don't do much damage, and then you're quite useless. The other thing to note is you're probably wondering how I'm surviving in this rift without getting leveled. I'm not using a Unity ring or anything. I'm using a ring called the Halo. I just call it the Halo. And basically, I'll show you all the items after. And what this does is it causes your ice armor to proc Frost Nova, and then you're wearing the braces you're wearing are called Ancient Pantherian Defenders, and every enemy that's frozen within a certain amount of yards gives you 12% damage reduction. So you'll notice that when I'm fighting the enemies, I never really stand still. That's because there's diminishing returns now. They've made it so CC is no longer infinite. I'm Frost Novering all the time, just because the enemies are hitting me, and that's proccing the Frost Nova. But the mods become immune to my freeze quite fast, so you have to constantly keep moving with this build in order to go around and freeze other enemies to give you the damage reduction to survive. If you try and stand there in one spot, you're just going to die, because your Frost Nova will proc, you'll be immortal for like the first 5 seconds, then they'll become immune to the freeze, and then you're basically just dead because nothing freezes, because they're immune to it, and then you'll just die. So you really want to avoid standing still. You've got to kind of constantly move to survive. You'll also, what that means is, you obviously have more survivability the more density there is. So the more monsters gives you you get more Archon stacks, and on top of that you get more Ancient Pantherian Defender procs, so you get more damage reduction via that, and it's just all around better. This build just scales like crazy through that. It's basically just through density. The other thing you have to do is you have to rebuff your ice armor once every 10 minutes and your magic weapon once every 10 minutes, because ice armor you will literally get one shot without that, because if you don't have the ice armor, that means your Ancient Pantherian Defenders don't proc. That means you don't get the extra 60% armor, I believe it is. You know, and magic weapon, obviously I'm using the deflection rune, which gives us a 10k life on hit shield. I'll go into that in a little bit. We're also using teleport, safe passage. So when you're outside of Archon form, you'll notice I do use my teleport quite a lot. That's due to the fact that it gives me 25% damage reduction. So that's really, really nice, and like when you're trying to survive. And when you're in Archon form, you'll also notice that, number 2, that's the slow time. You just want to maintain that buff. So the second you go in Archon form, you just press it once, and that's it. You're done. That's it. But apart from that, that's pretty much the rotation. So all you want to do is just keep mobile. You just never stand still. Constantly shift around when you're fighting. You'll notice if you go and if you want, you can rewatch the video and check out how I survive in certain situations. But you have to see how I'm kind of constantly, whenever I'm dying or whenever I'm in trouble, I just start shifting around, and that's just to avoid the diminishing returns on my freeze. That's so my Ancient Pantherian Defenders are just always procced, so I get that mean damage reduction. But apart from that, you're gonna learn. You're gonna learn when you play it. Yeah, and you just gotta fish for good rifts. This build also works really well for fishing, for farming Torment X. So if you're farming high Torment, it's pretty damn good, because Archon has a really short teleport cooldown. So it's really, really good for farming Torment X as well as doing greater rifts. But otherwise, let's go over the gear. I will post the rest of this rift at the end of the video if you want to see the rest of the rift and how the Rift Guardian dies and everything. So yeah, let's go over the gear. So what you want to use is that Chantoto's Will. Every second while on Archon form, you expel a wave of destruction, dealing 350% weapon damage to enemies within 30 yards. Now you might be like, that's not very much damage, but you're going to read the next part. Every time you hit with an attack while not in Archon form, 350% weapon damage is added to the wave of destruction, stacking up to 20 times. So that's this Chantoto stacks I was talking about before. And that's obviously, once you got 20 stacks, that's 7,000% weapon damage, pulsing, every second. It's pretty cray cray. It's pretty cray cray, and that's the Chantoto set. This just has perfect synergy with the Archon set. Obviously, the Archon set scales your damage percent directly, and so that means all your items and everything hit really hard. So this set goes really well with item procs, and you're going to see there's a wide variety of items you can choose to actually use with the set, and they all it's pretty cool. Like, you get to use all these cool little procs and stuff. Thing to note on the Chantoto's wheel here, you're going to want life on hit on it. That's the dream. The dream rolls have life on hit and potentially cooldown reduction. Like, probably if I could have a perfect one, it would be int, life on hit, cooldown reduction. But obviously I didn't get the dream one, so I've actually got my life on hit on my braces on my helmet instead. So you can kind of work around it, but really you're going to want a Chantoto's wheel with life on hit on it. Your offhand, Chantoto's force. The main thing you need to have on this bad boy here is crits grant. You want 4 arcane power if you get the good roll, and obviously a good damage range with good intellect. You can either have cooldown reduction or intellect depending on what you want to do. I don't have cooldown reduction on my gloves here, so I put it on my force. You can go either way. This rolls 1,000 vit and 8 cooldown. This rolls 1,000 vit and 8 cooldown. I wouldn't suggest doing it on both, just one or the other. You're going to use Veer's boots, Veer's pants, Veer's chest, Veer's shoulders. You need cooldown reduction on the shoulders, note. Veer's gauntlets. As I said before, you want either CDR on this or your source. Veer's helmet. I have my helmet is unconventional. Obviously, you would like to have vitality on there instead of life on hit, but I don't have life on hit my weapon, so I've opted for life on hit there. And that's the Veer set. Really simple. From there, you're going to be using a convention of elements. So obviously, this is a straight 50% damage increase, right? So it increases your damage output by 50% via multipliers that are completely separate from all the other multipliers. It's really good. That's on average, obviously. You can swap out convention for unity, so you can basically trade 50% damage for 50% damage reduction. Unity and convention are both really competitive. Unity basically allows you to completely ignore survivability, and you just stand there and you just smash stuff in the face, and it's really quite hard to die. But in the absolute dream maps, you don't need Unity, and you can get away with convention of elements. But this will be slightly more consistent in the worst maps. That's when you're doing solo push, obviously. If you're in a group, then obviously you're going to use convention of elements. Your Halo, this is the Halo ring I was talking about. Halo of allies. Your Ice Armor now reduces damage from melee attacks by 59 up to 60%. And automatically cast Frost Nova whenever you take 10% of your life and damage. And that 10% life is prior to mitigation. So basically every hit procs Frost Nova. It's just, the thing is just proccing like crazy. Because we're using Ice Armor obviously, and it's basically, it just means every time you get hit, boom, your little Frost Nova comes out, and then it procs your Ancient Partherian Defenders. Each enemy stunned within 25 yards reduces damage taken by 12%. And that just stacks and stacks and stacks to the point that when you're fighting, like, you know, anywhere over 10 enemies, your character's pretty much immortal until you know, the diminishing return sets in and they get out of the freeze and then they wreck your face. You're going to want to have crit and elemental damage on those braces, obviously. As far as necklaces go, I'm using a Mars Kaleidoscope. You can see this one is really, really good. I've got, you know, crit, elemental damage. It's the absolute highest DPS necklace you can get as far as rolls go. But you can opt for other necklaces. Some other really strong choices are your Eye of Elich, you know, range damage reduction. Obviously, that we've got a ton of melee reduction, so range reduction goes a long way as far as survival goes. This really helps versus some of the Rift Guardians, and really helps when you haven't got the best Rift. Moonlight Ward. This thing is, this amulet is really good because it can roll up to 25% arcane damage. It means you have to modify the build a little bit. You have to drop Fulminator out of the cube and put a Furnace in the cube. Just note that if you want to use Moonlight Ward. And the proc obviously scales with your Archon damage, so if you get a 320% proc, that is damage to everyone within 15 yards. That's multiplied by your Archon. It's pretty decent. It's a pretty nice proc, and then it's also got the nice elemental elite damage. You could also use other immunity amulets, but I'm going to keep using the Smart's Kaleidoscope. It's really, really nice. The belt I'm using is the False's Improbable Chain. This is seasonal only, so this is the best belt for the build. It used to be way better. They nerfed it, but obviously you're going to look for one that gives you 20 stacks. So that means the second you press Archon form, you instantly have, I've got 16 stacks. If you had a good one, it'd be 20. That means we've got 20% attack speed, 20 all resist, 20 damage. It's really, really, really nice. And that just really helps you initially when you're, trying to get those stacks up. If you don't have that seasonal belt, you could either use like a Witching Hour or like a String of Ears. They're both really good. Wouldn't say no to either of them. Or you could go like Firebird's like belt and necklace. They're all good. As far as the gems you want to use, I'm using Pain Enhancer. So critical hits cause the enemy to bleed for 3,300 over 3 seconds. This is multiplied by your Archon set, so your Pain Enhancer does really quite a lot of damage. It's like item damage scales insanely well with this build. So yeah, Pain Enhancer is juicy, and also the attack speed gives you get crazy attack speed when you've got lots of density. And when you got lots of density, you get more Archon stacks, and more attack speed means you can get more Archon stacks. It has perfect synergy with the build. I wouldn't switch that out ever. It's really, really nice. We're using Bane of the Stricken. This is a seasonal gem, and each attack you make against the enemy increases damage it takes by 1.54% and gain 25% damage versus bosses and Rift Guardians. This obviously is specifically in the gear just to kill the Rift Guardian. It takes a Rift Guardian from like a 5-minute fight to a sub 2-minute fight. It's really, really powerful. So that just saves you a lot of time. It doesn't really do much in the Rift because it does have an internal cooldown. So in an AoE scenario, it's pretty pathetic. But it helps you, kill the Rift Guardian and finish off certain like annoying elites that won't die. As far as the other gem we're using a Bane of the Trapped. Just the most overpowered gem in the game. It procs itself, so the secondary procs the primary. So you just get 37.5% damage, and it's just always going. Obviously, we're using topazes, and we've got cooldown reduction in the helmet. An important thing to note is for this build, you want to be over 50% cooldown reduction the whole time. So you see I'm at 50.39. As long as you're over 50, that's good. If you're a little bit higher than that, that's even better. So it's really good. Oh, and also, if you can't use Bane of the Stricken, so if you're non-season, I would probably suggest using Gogeki's Swiftness, and then if you put that on, obviously you're going to have 15% extra cooldown reduction, and that means you can actually drop CDR off other pieces of gear, so you can drop it off your weapon, and pick up some more damage on your weapon, etc. So you could drop CDR off your weapon and get like weapon attack speed, or like 10% damage, or something like that. Alright, gear, now we'll go to the cube. Got a little list there so I don't forget to tell you guys something. So we're using Fulminator as our weapon because I'm lightning. Fulminator is really, really good. It procs multiple times, and it just obviously the 555% dot that just scales with the Archon buffs, and it does a lot of damage. So as I said before, if you're using something like a Moonlight Ward, you're going to want to use a Furnace instead. If you're doing T10 speed runs, you can opt to switch the Fulminator out for like an Aether Walker. Also, Shard of Hate has slightly more DPS than a Fulminator in single target situations, but Fulminator will be infinitely better in a really good dense Rift. The main two choices are Fulminator and the Furnace. Also, one other random weapon that you can get away with, which I've seen some people using, I haven't actually got around to trying it myself, is Rhymeheart. So you can put Rhymeheart in there. Just remember, you have to go cold if you use a Rhymeheart, just like you have to go lightning if you want to use a Fulminator. And yeah, that'll proc, and you'll hit like that. Actually hits harder than it's doing more damage than your Chantotos. So it's the biggest hitting ability you'll actually have. And so it'll be pretty fun. But I don't think, mathematically, it doesn't make sense. Fulminator is going to do a lot more DPS in an AoE scenario. We're also using the Swami, so that's the thing that makes Archon stacks last 20 seconds after you go out of Archon. Really, really overpowered. You can't really play the build without it, unfortunately. It's just that powerful. Because in Greater Rifts, without Archon stacks, your character will get snapped in half. Which is why at the beginning of the rift, that's the hardest time to get started because you haven't got that momentum going and you haven't got the stacks. So you'll see it's always really hard to survive at the beginning of the rift. Just like if you die during the rift, then you've got to try and get those bloody stacks up again, and it's horrendous. So this just makes the build so much more smooth, and that gives you that momentum, which makes the whole build, you know, scale like crazy. And we're using Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. So that's obviously the thing we were talking about before, which reduces the cooldown of Archon. So the second we get out of Archon form, we just start spamming our Arcane Torrent, and we just blast the Archon cooldown back straight away using this ring. It's pretty mandatory. There's nothing you can really switch that up for as well. Alright, let's go over skills. So, as far as the Archon goes, it doesn't matter what rune you use. You can use any rune, because the set, Vias, you get all Archon runes regardless. So, 2 set Archon gains the effect of every rune. So, there you go. It's really, really powerful. This is the skill in debate right now for as far as the wizards are going. So, I'm using Magic Weapon Deflection. So, you get 10k shield that lasts 3 seconds whenever you perform an attack. Okay, something that a lot of people don't know about this is it actually procs off your off your Frost Nova proc. So every time you get hit by an enemy, if you've got like heaps of enemies hitting you, your Frost Nova is like proccing like this. It's going bang, 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 bang. And every time your Frost Nova procs, it's proccing deflection. Every time you've got your crazy attack speed, and you're going bang, bang, bang in Archon form, that's proccing deflection. Also, your Lightning Blast is also proccing deflection. And actually, it's really, really nice. I've noticed it stacks. So the more times, so you'll see here, I put it up, and as long as I hit some stuff, so you can see it's going 32k, 21k. So you can see it stacks. That's when that thing go over like 50k quite frequently within rifts. So I think it's really good. The other option that I've been testing out, and it is really good. A lot of you guys might even like this more. So you might be like wondering, wait, what? Why are we using 2 spinners? What's the point of that? Basically, what you do is you hold down your Arcane Torrent, and then you spam Snowbound in between, and it actually resets the attack speed of it because you're recasting Arcane Torrent, and then you're also cancelling the animation with the Snowbound. You can get your Archon stacks up really, really fast. If you've got like over 150 stacks, using this combination, you can literally have a downtime of 2 seconds. You'll be like, boom, out of Archon, back in Archon straight away. And what that means is, you have more overlap, and it means you have more momentum. So it potentially could be better in a really, really good rift, but it's going to be less consistent. So that's why I've chosen to play with deflection, and it has that really cool stacking effect, and it just gives you that little bit more survivability. But I mean, in a really good rift, you don't need survivability because you're going to have insane stacks. So yeah, I'm just putting that out there. You can go Snowbound if you want. So Teleport's Safe Passage gives you 25% damage reduction whenever you teleport. It's really good. It's the best room for doing greater rifts with. Basically, just whenever you're at Archon form, you just keep that buff up, and you just keep going. You just shoot stuff with your Arcane Torrent, and that'll just keep you alive. If you're doing speed runs, you can use, what was the one I'm using? After casting teleport, yeah, you can teleport 1 additional time. That can be good for doing Torment 10. So if survivability is not a problem, and you're just doing speed runs, then you can use the double teleport rune, obviously. We're also using Frost Nova Deep Freeze. So you might be wondering, why do you even have this if if your ring procs it anyway? You're literally using it for the buff. So you don't ever cast it, because if you cast this ability, it's going to actually eat into your Archon cooldown, because your Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac only reduces 1 skill at a time. So if this is on cooldown, instead of reducing Archon when you're casting, it's going to reduce the Frost Nova instead. But what having this on your bar does, it means when your Halo Ring procs, it uses this rune automatically, and it means you get 10% crit the entire rift. So it's really, really nice. Basically you get 10% crit for having that on your bar. But you generally won't press it. There'll be rare scenarios in which you can actually press it for extra survivability, but really it's pretty irrelevant. You don't want to press that. We're using Arcane Torrent, Static Discharge. It's really fast with your Chantoto stacks and your Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, and it also does the most damage. So and it costs like only 16 arcane power. So it's really good. You can use it, like you can just pop it and move, kind of like that. Or if you've got a ton of Archon stacks and you're surrounded by a ton of enemies, you can just sit there and just channel it. And actually, once it's channeling at its maximum power, it actually does 1,000 DPS. So it's actually quite a lot of damage if you're actually able to sit there and spamming it. But that's only in the really good rifts you can sit there and spamming it. Most of the time, you're kind of like running around like a little weakling, trying not to die. We're using Ice Armor Crystallize. In my opinion, this is basically the best rune. Because if you know how damage reduction works, and you'll see here I've only got 8,000 armor, right? Whereas my aura resist is sitting at 83% because I'm intellect plus 16.9. We get crazy aura resist, right? But we have really bad armor, and what this does is this gets the multipliers closer to each other. And if you get the multipliers balanced out, you actually get much more value out of your damage reduction. So this gives you the most effective health out of all the runes of the Ice Armor, and obviously procs your Halo ring as well. So it's really, really strong. You can't not use this. This is your survivability mechanism, and yeah, it's just really, really powerful. Alright, so passive skills now. I'm using Audacity, so you deal 30% damage to enemies within 15 yards. That's a multiplier, so it's really powerful, really strong. A thing worth noting is additive damage buffs. So when I say additive damage, I mean like skill damage and stuff like that, and things like magic weapons, so increases your damage by 10%. That just adds with the Archon stacks. So the build does not scale with additive damage like very well at all. It's kind of sad, but it's the way it is. So you want to stay away from things like that. You're just looking for multipliers. We're using unstable anomaly, and that basically means you get a cheat death. It's really, really helpful because obviously, as I said before, if you die at the start of the rift, or if you die during the rift, it's really hard to get your Archon stacks back up. And this just helps you not being dead, basically. Because if you die, you're screwed. You have to start again, and you've got to start building your Archon stacks back up, and it just really slows down the pace of the rift. Evocation, 20% cooldown reduction. This is mandatory. You have to have this. Really, really, really powerful. And Blur, 17% damage reduction. Just a really nice little damage reduction multiplier. Stacks with everything else and gives you that crazy survivability. As far as Paragons go, we are using a maximum arcane power, because sometimes when you're fighting the boss, your arcane power struggles because you're not getting enough arcane power on crit to maintain your arcane power, and that just means you're going to have more of a redundancy, and you can actually you've got a high chance of getting to 20 stacks before you run out of arcane power when there's low density. Then you just cap your movement speed to 25%, so there's 12 on my boots, so I got 13 in my Paragon. Then you just max intellect. As far as stat priority here goes, you're going to want to go cooldown reduction, then you want to go crit damage, then attack speed, and then crit chance. Obviously we're doing crit damage before everything else, because this build only has you only have one green gem, so your crit damage is always suffering, and it's always way lower, and you obviously have that extra 10% crit chance from your Frost Nova, so you're sitting at 73% crit chance, which means the value of your crit damage is greatly inflated. As far as defensive stats, you want to go armor, so armor percent, because obviously our armor percent is our weakest, basically that's our weakest stat, so by increasing that we get way more value out of it. Then you want to go aura resist, life percent, and then life regen. As far as utility goes, you want to go, so resource cost reduction does nothing, so you don't want that. You're going to go area damage, life on hit, resource cost reduction, and then gold fine. But that pretty much sums up the guide. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to post the rest of the video now, so you guys can watch that. But otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Peace the hell out, and have a good day, boys. Have a good day.